Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Paolo, also known as Genoma on Instagram and here on YouTube. And today we are going to create a holographic card inspired by the Pokemon trading card game. I have a small video here. Hopefully I'm not breaking any copyright, but I might have seen it. Is one of my favorite apps and games of the past years. I think it's amazing what they managed to do with these cards and how they moved and transferred this feeling of holographic cards into the digital space. So I had to try it myself. I had to try and make it myself. This is of course not how they did it because it's not using any shaders. It's not using any coding per se or direct coding. We're just doing everything in tops and remapping the hell out of textures and learning something on the way, hopefully. So I hope you're subscribed. Please, if you're not, subscribe to get my next videos. I finally have a space to work on this stuff, so I hopefully will do more and more. Yeah, thank you for watching so far. Last year has been great. I made 5 videos and it's way more than I thought I could do. And let's try to do more this year. And without further ado, let's clean all of this and start from scratch. Okay, so as first thing, I'm gonna add the images that I'm gonna use. I will make this available in the description and on the file that on Buy Me a Coffee. But feel free to basically make your own assets. By the way, shout out to my girlfriend that has created this illustration. I will leave the link to her stuff, her Instagram profile and whatnot in the description. If you're in Oslo and want to get a tattoo, just reach out. And yeah, so this is going to be what we're going to use for layering in the final card. And then we start with our actual the geometry for the card. And I'm going to just use a rectangle and set the size to 1.5 in the height. So 1 by 1.5. This is going to be our dimension. And I'm going to add some corners like border radiuses and set that to 0.1. And then we're going to add the null and just create the most traditional geometry setup. So just add geometry, a camera, a light. And then for the material, we're going to use a PBR material. And we can then add a render. Great. I'm going to, of course, use that material on our card. Now it turned black. That's fine. That's usually what happens with PBR materials. But we can look into that later because we are actually not using the texture from the render. But we're going to sort of, we're going to use different buffers from the render to create the effect that we're going to make. And usually this effect, even in the kind of Pokemon trading card game that this is based on, of course you would do all of that with a material, with a shader and whatnot. But of course I wanted to try and make it without using shaders because I think it's more fun and it also gives some sort of intuition on how things sort of work. And so on. So again, this doesn't have to be a production ready stuff, but it's more like to learn and have fun. So in the PBR material, I'm gonna select the first buffer here and set it to texture coordinates, and then the second one is gonna be our world space normal. To get access to those render passes or render buffers, I'm gonna create 2 render select and drag my render into them. In order to have this unselect being able to output something, first of all, we need to go into the actual buffer that we have created. But of course, we get some errors here, and that's because we need to set up our render properly. So to start with, I'm gonna turn off anti-alias. That's because we're gonna use a lot of remapping, and we don't want interpolation happening. So we want kind of the smoothest and cleanest pixels to work with. Same here. So nearest pixel, we're gonna set this to 32-bit RGBA. And of course, the most important part, dither, we can turn that off to have, again, the best quality out of the render, and then select how many buffer we are supposed to have. And that is it. So now we need to, I'm gonna add some movement to the card so that we can have some variation, especially in the normal buffer, because now it's pointing straight at us, so it's going to be fully blue. In order to do that, I'm just going to add a noise chop, create 3 channels, X, and I'm going to call them actually RX, RY, and RZ, and we will see Y later. And turn time slicing on, create a null, and from here we're gonna take this and bring them into the rotation. So Rx in the rotation on the x-axis, Ry on the y, and Rz on the z. Of course, this is extremely fast and a little bit annoying. Another thing maybe, so we can get a nice layout here to see what is going on. I'm gonna set the resolution. I can just invert this. I want everybody to be able to do this, so I'm gonna keep it to 720 by 1280. But again, doesn't matter. You could have it double the resolution or whatever you can run on your computer. And then I'm gonna take an out all the way over here and make it active. Right click on the background here, and on display, go down and say check off the backdrop tops. And then here I'm gonna split my panels in 2, and here in this drop down I will select top viewer. So now we are seeing the output of all our work over here. I'm gonna zoom in with the camera a little bit. I want this to be a bit kind of close up. Nice. And finally, I'm gonna crank this up a bit. So now the noise value is gonna be between -1 and 1, and I want that to be maybe between -20 and 20 on all axes. And of course, you can see it's going a bit fast, so I'm going to increase not the seed, but the period to about 6. So we have this kind of smooth, constant movement that is not too annoying to look at. All right, so now we can actually start to build up our effect. And throughout this process, we're going to create a component, like a base, which has some parameters. So be ready for some fine-tuning, or rather not fine-tuning, but creating all the parameters for that. But that is going to be easier for us to then layer things on top of each other. And of course, remember, you can always skip. I try to put the chapters in the description, so then they should show up in YouTube. Anyways, so we want to start with the noise texture. That is the easiest, and then of course you will understand how you can basically swap this for whatever you want and kind of recreate the effect with whatever. But again, because I'm basing myself on this example, if I stop here and I look at it, I don't know if I can zoom, but you can see here it's quite like what it looks to me, it's just a noise that is being stretched and rotated, and also all the kind of coloration in the backside. I'm not talking about the dots, and we will see about that, but if you look at only the kind of holographic effect, it seems like to me it's just a noise that has been a bit manipulated. So that is what I try to do. And I started with a noise over here. I'm gonna set a size of 1000 by 1500. So actually, maybe let's try and do it like that. And then we can take this copy parameter, paste it here, and then we divide this by 3 and multiply it by 2. So that should give us the same aspect ratio, basically. Great. So then I can just take this over here and this is gonna be our, I call it environment texture, because this is what is gonna actually be reflected, or we're gonna create this holographic effect with. And the way I thought about it is like it's sort of a reflection, but is also as a reflection that has some three-dimensionality to it, and also based on the inclination of the card, there is some shifting of colors and whatnot. But I'm looking at this basically, first of all, as we're trying to create a mirror. Either a mirror or a portal, call it whatever you want. Point is, I'm going to start with this texture coordinate. And by the way, what are they? This is basically, it takes the geometry and tells me, this is 0, 0 in the UV coordinate of that geometry. And it goes to 1 on this side, 1, 1, and 0, 1. It's just a UV map, pretty much. So I want to remap then. I want to remap our texture onto our card. And this sort of works, but it doesn't quite work. So that is because we are setting the source to source image. Instead, we want to use the UV. And look at that. We basically texture our geometry without going through the material. And as far as my understanding of shaders goes, that is pretty much what happens in a shader. So it's just for each pixel of the geometry, inside of the geometry of the UV, that UV is mapped onto a texture, or that texture is mapped onto a UV. Anyways, so we now have our card, and I now want to be able to have control over the zoom. So how now we're mapping that texture within the exact bounds of our UV. I want to set have control over the zoom, basically. So I can add a math, and in the math add panel, I can see what happens when I multiply. And you can see it's kind of doing what we want to do, but I want it to be centered. So in order to do that, it's very simple. We just need to subtract minus 0.5 before the multiplication, and then add plus 0.5 after. That is because we are moving sort of the reference coordinate for the scaling or for the multiplication, and then sort of resetting it. And you can see now that we can zoom in and out of that texture. Now we get this crazy effect around in the background, and that is because the remap is trying to remap the transparent color to something, and as long as things are staying within the bounds, it's okay, but when it goes out, it freaks out. But that's okay, we're gonna fix that later. In fact, we're gonna fix that later, but let's create the mask that is gonna fix that now. So here, and you can take this from wherever, honestly, but I'm just taking it from this render, and I right click here and take out the threshold, and I put it up here. And then we set, we're gonna check the alpha and then move this slider all the way to 0 and then just, so basically I want every pixel that is not transparent to be white. So then you can understand how we are gonna be able to composite that in with the outcome of our effect and clean things up before we kind of get to the end of our node network. Okay, so now we are able to map the texture onto our geometry, clean everything up, and being able to also to scale that in and out. But that's not enough. We need to create some sort of parallax effect, pretty much, and also shift the colors based on that. So how do we do that? We can start by basically adding a math here. So we take our normal, which represents the direction in which the face of the geometry is facing towards. And we can, for now, maybe turn it down to 0.2. We can play with that later. And what I want to do is I want to modify the UV coordinates that are mapping, that are going and pick the pixel onto our environment texture. I want to modify that with basically some idea of direction. So where is the card pointing, and using that direction information to shift the way we are looking at that texture. I'm gonna then add a add node, and I'm gonna add this to our UV texture, and then that is used to remap. And now you see how there is some sort of sliding going on. Based on the inclination of the card, we are going to pick up a different position or a different part of the texture. And to emphasize that, I can probably crank this up to 45. Then you can see how by kind of moving around, the texture kind of changes its location and so on. I want to show you something before we go forward. A funny way, funny or fun, rather fun way of playing with this and make it a bit more interactive. And it's, I have this here. I have my old iPhone SE. So it's like a phone that I use in case of emergency. But what you can do, and I think there is a free version of this app that does exactly the same thing. You can, I'll try to put some kind of overlay. Actually, let me just record the screen as I talk about this. Okay. So, this app is called ZIGSIM Pro, and it's super cool little app that I would strongly recommend to buy. And it basically, what it does is just allows you to send over different protocols to your computer and to Touchdesigner information about your phone, acceleration, quaternion, so rotation information, gyroscope, gravity, all the sensor, all the cameras, even AR stuff, tracking, all this kind of stuff. And all of that is then possible to use in Touchdesigner. You probably know this already, but I just wanted to make it clear. So what I'm gonna do is just go into the app here, select quaternion, and then in the settings here, you can decide the port number, what protocol to use, or like what message format, the refresh rate, all of these things. What you need to do is just go into your computer settings, figure out what your computer IP address is. In my case, it's this one in my local network. So I'm just gonna input that number in there, and then I press play. Now, what this app is doing is streaming all the data to Touchdesigner. And now if I go into the chop and use an OC in, and I set this port to be the one that says here on the device, you can see how I move this and I'm getting information about the rotation on my phone. So again, skip this if you don't get to do this, but I think this is very cool. I can then add a select. So select. I'm gonna select all the quaternion information. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm gonna select them all and copy them in here. And I want to rename them to QX, QY, QZ, and QW. So that stands for quaternion. And then I'm gonna use a transform. And what this does is basically converting quaternion rotation information into Euler. So the output here Euler, and that is stuff that we can actually use, right? So I can again select this out and select Rx, Ry, and Rz, right? And that is why we call this one before like that. I'm gonna just add a switch. And then before I do that, actually in my transform, I also want to do some tweaking. So I want to remove 90 degrees on this, on the x-axis, not on the translate, sorry, here. Oh boy. Okay, minus 90 here, 0 here. Okay, and then into the input page, we want to be sure that we have custom input orders. At least this is working for my my phone and my configuration. So if this doesn't work for you, you might have to tweak a little bit, but in one way or another, you should be able to figure it out. And then set the rotate order to RY, RZ, and RX. So that should convert the rotation of the phone properly, basically. Perfect. So I am now going to drag this into the switch and then switch to it. And all of a sudden, I have control of that card using my phone. And I think this is super cool on one side, and it becomes very useful to actually figure out what is happening. So you can see that when I rotate the card in this kind of direction, I created almost like a little portal, right? I can look over the borders of the card. And that is pretty much the concept that we are gonna explore and develop today. So I will switch back now to that mode. So we can now continue and build up the effect. So how do we split the colors now? For once, I also want to have some sort of control over this kind of normal here. So I hope I remember this correctly, but I'm gonna add a math here again. I will not touch it for now, just in case that is not really needed, but I want to keep, and try to keep things a bit organized. But what we need to multiply 3 times is this one. So I'm gonna bring this up pretty much together. And then if you have followed other tutorials, liquid glass or the one with the chromatic aberration, the concept is kind of similar. We want to split or shift the way the texture is mapped and then recombine it together so that the 3 different channels represents the same image, but they are slightly offset, and that creates this holographic effect. And if that is based on the inclination of the card, then they are also changing according to that. So pretty much now we can just do this. Here we just add a reorder and bring this in. And then I'm going to set input 2 and input 3. Of course, nothing happens yet. But if I go here and I set this to 0.3, let's say, and this to 0.4, here we go. We start to have some color shift based on the inclination. Yes. So if I quickly switch to this, yeah, you can start to see that we're getting somewhere, right? And why do I want to zoom in? You can see that I start to sample outside of the texture, and that it's kind of a problem in a way. And there are different ways you can work around that. You can make a texture that is seamless so that you can set remap to repeat or to mirror. And this is already working okay-ish, but I just don't personally like it, so I just set it to 0. And instead, I can use these values here to kind of maybe go more into it. Now there is no way I can look outside of my texture. And then you can see how if I look it straight ahead, it kind of less, and then the more I shift it, the more yeah, this happens basically. And then I think that the reason why I put this is because my phone locked itself. The reason why I added this is because this one in theory allows us to move the kind of location of that parallax. So in this way you can see that it's like the texture is in front of the card, but it's being cropped by the card. And if I move this value over, it's now behind the card. And I think this is such a cool effect because we start to have some sort of really like a portal effect kind of thing that can be used in other ways. So I will leave it up to you to explore more of that. But this gives us quite a lot of flexibility on to where to position and create this holographic effect. Great. So we're at a very good place right now. But again, if I bring up the example here, you can see we have these stripes, we have different kind of level of reflection, we have maybe a different bump. There is like way more going on. And I'm not saying that I'm going to create all of it, but I want to take it to a step. I want to step it up in a way. So I go back here and I'm going to create a new noise texture. So I'm going to create, starting from here, so I get the resolution, all that. But I'm going to set the output to only noise. I'm going to go and set the transform to 0.1. So we start to get these stripes. Then you can tweak this how much you want, of course. I also want to, if you set translate, so it's set the order to translate, rotate, and scale, and then you can rotate the texture, maintaining the generation going to edge from edge to edge. I'm saying this because if you set this to 0 and say, oh, you can use a transform to do that, the transform will work, but also you get that. And even if you tile it, you have the same issue as before. It's not this sort of works, but in some cases it kind of starts to break up because again, you're mirroring just what is inside your texture, all that. So I prefer to do this instead. So now I have a texture that defines the wrinkles, let's say, that I want to have. And how do I show wrinkles in a geometry? Usually you add a height map or some sort of bump map to the normal, or a normal map, basically, that represents all the kind of differences in height in the surface and whatnot. But we don't have a normal map here. We do have a normal map down here, and it's a clean, just a geometry, right? And I tried, initially I thought I can just add the normal, create a normal map, add it to the material, but then would override this, and then everything gets kind of out of control. I feel like I have less control over what is happening. You can try and go down that road and see if it works. I tried a couple of times. I wasn't happy with the effect or the result, so I prefer to do it this way. So what I'm doing instead is adding a slope. So again, this is like, you can see this as being your first pass of like, you can build up your height map or the bump basically in different ways. But so what a slope does is it looks at the differences in values in the image, and we have to set this to horizontal luminance and then here vertical luminance for the green. I will leave the blue as well there. And then move the 0 point to 0, and then the strength will leave it to 1. Now, we don't see anything, but there is something in there, and it's information about the changing in value within the texture. So now I believe I never set this to 32-bit. We need to do that. So remember to work always with this 32-bit float. because now you can see, I don't know if you noticed before, but this was very grainy and not high resolution and smooth, and now this is very nice texture. Okay, so what we want to do basically is now add this to our normal map over here. But if I take it and just slap it on, let's say I do that. So I'm gonna add a math just to have some control over it down here, and then I slap it on. I'm not gonna even do it because you understand already what is the problem. They are not mapped in the same way, right? This is on the geometry, this is not. So I just need to do the same I did before. So I'm gonna just take this, one of these remaps, and bring down my UV texture or UV coordinates, and then map my this texture over here to this to the card. Okay, so then I'm gonna take all of this stuff and drag it over here, come out from here with an add, and now I'm gonna add my map or bump map to the card itself. So that is now stacking up all together and adding to the effect, distorting the light in even more ways, and add the complexity that we really want. And yeah, so at this point you can also play individually, and so you have full control over what is happening. You have control over the normal map at this level, and you have control over the bump over here. So if I scale this up, and you can start to see that is a very cool effect. So, but maybe I want it only on the edges. So how do I do that? And here it's just a matter of layering things on top of each other. So I'm gonna add a rectangle over here. And now this is creating a hole because it's going somewhere else completely to pick our texture. So it's completely off the range. I'm gonna take this and make it a black, and you see how you can see what happened there. So now you can see how we have removed, because what we're doing is basically nullifying the height or the height representation at the center of this image. And if I set this to 0.9 and then 1.4, which is just the aspect ratio of our image with 1.1 less, basically, I can create a little nice border around it. So something like that. Okay. And now that is kind of it for this part, of course. Okay. So what is happening here? Here we're multiplying. Yes. Okay. I want to actually keep this. So what I'm going to do now is take all of this here, take it over here, and create a component. I'm going to select, so right click outside there and collapse selected. Now we're going to have a component that takes in a bunch of stuff and outputs the holographic card, basically. Or one layer, let's call it the bottom layer, right? If I enter it, I'm gonna just quickly clean up the stuff here. I'm gonna call this bump map, normal, UV, let me call it coordinates, and this is, I'm calling it environment. And also I want to make sure that they're in good order. So I want the environment first, then UV coordinate second, normal third, fourth, and then we should have down here here we go. This is the mask. So if we want to mask something, we can just input whatever mask we want there, and it's gonna work. Also, we want somehow like a fallback, perhaps, at least for that. So I'm just gonna add a constant and put it in here just in case we don't have any, and for same for this, because yeah, and I'm gonna put this as 0, so it's like there's no bump. Yes, and in here I want, so the mask is the first input to transform. Okay, fixed layer is input 2, so okay, so even if we disconnect, let's say we disconnect this one, then it's still gonna, oh, I did something wrong. Wait, this should be 4. Okay, so I did make something wrong. What did I disconnect? I disconnected our bump map. No. Okay, let's go up. Reconnect the bump map. And see, that's why it's so important to have a good organization. But yeah, so if I now disconnect this, you would see that, okay, it's not breaking anything. It's just not masking out our card. Anyways, I'm gonna call this layer holographic layer, maybe holographic layer. And before I use this for other things, and this is the kind of boring part I was talking about, I'm gonna go just try to go very quickly and personalize this base. So we have all the parameters and everything, and then we will continue. So to do that, again, you can skip ahead if you want to go forward, but customize component, and I want to add red shift, green shift, blue shift, and then I want a global shift, and then I want a scale factor, add depth, and I think that might be it. We'll see later. I'm gonna just select my global shift and create a section here, and also, oh no, I want section, yeah, that's okay, like that. So if I click here and I see, now we have this, perfect. So I think that our depth should be between, let's say, -2 and 2. We start with the 0.1 as a default. Scale factor, let me see. This is basically this one. So we have it now set to 0.46. So probably we can just set it to 0.5 by default and leave it from between 0 and 1. We can always change that later. For our depth, this is going to be our depth. This is going to be our, oh, that's the one I missed. Bump factor, we can call it like that. No. Bump factor. And now this is set to 8, so we want to at least give it between 0 and 10, default 1. Okay. So I now need to connect those to my internal patch here. So I'm just gonna go and get the parameter chop, and So when it comes to this stuff here, I want to have some sort of control. That's why I have a global shift. So I'm gonna select those out. Select those out, red, green, and blue. Add the math. And now I'm gonna select out the global and click here. Sorry, connect it here and set combine chops to multiply. And then I'm gonna rearrange this. Let's go and see. So now it's between, I would say, 0.1 and 0.9. Again, you can do your version. The point is, I want to be able to, and I'm gonna open the parent parameters. I want to be able to basically set these numbers to some, how much are they shifting compared to each other. But then I want to be able to use this value here to okay, yes. This value here to scale them down to the minimum they should be. So yeah, this is a full representation of this shift, and I'm taking with this slider, I can take it all down to the minimum that they were set to. Anyways, we can see the effect of that later. I'm gonna just continue here now, and null, adding a null there, and pretty much everything else is done. So I want to just connect this. Let me just remove a bunch of stuff here. And close this as well. So I want to connect the red shift to this one. I'll connect the green shift with this one, and the blue shift with this one. Okay, let me just quickly test. So we have some shift there, and then if I increase this value, you can see how we are actually representing it, and you can start to see it, and I can increase that as much as I want and get it like that. Cool. And then finally, let's connect the other stuff, and I'm gonna just connect it straight from here. I don't know if that's a savage thing to do, but I'm doing it. So this is our bump. I'm gonna just take the bump factor and set it as a reference there. Scale factor we said is this one down up here. And then this one is the depth. Okay. So let's open once again the parameters. I want to change the depth. Okay, I can go forward and backwards. And the scale also is working. So perfect. We are at a good point. We can also, of course, control how much the strength of that is. Great. And from here, everything looks fine. Okay, so this means that we can use this to do holographic stuff, or also we don't. So let's say I want to layer now on top of this, I want to layer these amazing images, right? I split them in two parts, so I have two layers to play with. And you can do this with any shape maybe that you have in Touchdesigner, or make your own drawing and whatnot. So I'm really curious to see what you guys are gonna, and girls, gonna make. So please tag me if you do any of this, and I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen. So actually, I'm just gonna drag this anywhere, because I'm gonna first of all duplicate this, and what I'm gonna do is just replace this environment map with my texture, and you can see some crazy stuff is happening here, and that is because, let me just take out a null and display it here. Oh, what did I do? I broke my settings. Okay. let's just look at it here. Why not looking at it there then? So what is happening? Of course, I still have my bump input here that maybe I don't want. So I'm gonna disconnect that. And we want the masking, that's perfect. But then we have this kind of very strong shifting, right? So either I can take this to 0, or I can leave it a little bit so I can play around with it, but then use this factor here to just, you know, and it's just so nice to have like a little bit of shifting. And then of course we want the zoom. So we want to zoom it back out. And look how good this is working. I mean, I'm very surprised, honestly. And then the cool thing is we also have still control over the depth. So now you can see how I can bring it in a way that it looks like it's behind the card, or I can bring it forward so that based on the movement, the bird looks coming out, although it's still cropped by the card itself. And I think that's super cool. Yeah, so we don't have the bump. We have this, so we can now start layering stuff. So if I take a composite and set it to over, I can then go and overlay my bird on top of my card, and you can start to see the effect showing very nicely. And then you can just duplicate this one more time. You might find this to be quite impactful on your computer if you're using very high resolution and whatnot, because there is a lot of stuff going on and a lot of like kind of repetitive remapping and all that. But for now, especially this relatively lower resolution, it's pretty nicely. It works pretty nicely. Okay, I can just add that, bring it up, and now I have my layer, separate layer with the petals. And I can do whatever I want with that. So I can decide to have a different shift on it, or no shift at all, but I want the scale factor to be different. And you can see how it goes behind. It's so fucking cool. And yeah, and then again, the depth as well. Like, is it inside the card? But then, so I can put it inside the card and then scale it in such a way that it's behind. I mean, it's very nice. Yeah, so I'm just gonna leave it at some place that I'm happy with. Of course, if you want it, let's say, forward and be on top of the bird, then you can just move it on top of the bird, right? So now, yeah, if I scale it up, you see that it's in front of the bird. But I want it to be in the back. So I'm gonna move it like that, and I'm gonna bring the bird forward and maybe scale this up a little bit extra. Yeah, something like that. I'll leave it to you to decide. Maybe there's a bit too much shift on this bird. But yeah, perfect. Then what else do I want to do? I wanted to play around a bit with the background and make it a bit more interesting. I'm not gonna add a title to this because apparently the name in English is Great Tits, or this is a great tit. I don't want to have probably. I hope this is already not costing me something at a YouTube level, but I will leave it to you to add some text. But you can understand how basically you can continue and build up different layers with the different stuff. But what I want to do is to add some extra detail into that bump. And I wanted to add it inside this gray area, right? So how do we do that? I want to start with a noise. And I take it out, actually, so it should be independent. A noise, and I want to also start with a custom resolution and make it square. And the reason is just because, well, I will show you in a second. I'm gonna add a limit. So I want to pixelate this this noise. I'm gonna add a limit, and then in the quantize page, go to, I don't know, round, and then I can also set a chop here, a constant, and just call this divisions, and set this to 50. Okay, then I'm gonna go here, drop this in here, and then write 1 divided by that. So now we're dividing by 50, and for our purposes, actually, this is not a problem, but usually what I do is also I copy this parameter and I paste the reference over here, and then I go in here and I divide by 2. That kind of takes it, you see how you have these edges, and that one removes those edges. Since we're not really going to use this texture all the way to the edge, it doesn't really matter, but I am thinking now that I just want to shape this back basically to what it was. I'm gonna oh no, dang it. Take this rectangle, set resolution only, remove this normalized view, and I want to make it white. And then actually, should I just, no, okay. There might be a smarter way to do this. Probably I did it in a smarter way before, but whatever. So input, yeah, clearly this, oh no, yeah, it's correct, okay. So I'm taking this resolution, I'm compositing, right, this on this and multiplying this. Basically we get this transparent edge. But as you can see, now we have the problem back to the start. So I want to kind of unsquish it, and you can just do that by fit outside. So now it's just fitting the texture in a way that is keeping the square texture. Anyways, now what we can do is to add an over. What happened there? Let me just add a composite. Oh boy, composite. Okay, I'm gonna also no, actually that should be fine. I'm just gonna add it. I'm gonna set this to over, and I'm gonna move this over. So now we're modifying our slope, or like our bump texture, which, by the way, as a reminder, looks like, hello, okay, it looks like this. So it's very much black, and we're now overlaying something extremely bright on top that would clearly completely destroy our bump texture. If I in fact add it, you can see. But something is happening. So what we can do is just control the noise that we're using. So I'm gonna bring it down here and also bring this down. And you can see already some crazy stuff happening. So I can just add this very low level, something like that. It's probably fine. And yeah, you can play around with this. You can play around with, you know, and probably, I guess we want to even lower. Something like that. And yeah. So I'm gonna just add a transform here. I want to scale it up a little bit so we don't get, here we go, that's better. Just to remove some strange edges on the side there. Okay. And then one last thing, I think would be nice to add some separation between the holographic effect on the edges and on the front. So I want to create some sort of just texture map of sorry, not composite, some texture map for the background, basically for the center of the card in a way. So constant. It started to be a bit messy over here, and again, I'm pretty sure you can find a better and cleaner way of doing all of this. Let me just move stuff around a little bit. Can bring this up here. Okay, but this one is going to be our color. So what color should we make it? I think maybe some sort of purple would work nicely. I also want to add some noise to make it a bit more crispy. So I'm going to bring this down all the way to 0.1. Bring this down to 0. Actually, no, bring this up to 1 and go and set this to times. So input times noise, and then do the same. Yeah, perfect. So, and then set to alpha to input, so we're not gonna get any noise on the alpha channel, yeah, there. And then here we can just tune this to our liking. So I just wanted to be very subtle, but also, so one noise that I really like to add to images is like increasing the exponent to about there and then play with this, and it comes out so much more natural. But anyways, yeah, so we can now add a level perhaps, and then layer it on top. Oh, of course I forgot to remap this. So in this case, I don't want to have all that extra stuff. We just want to remap the image. And I don't want to have too much control over that. So I'm just gonna take a remap and connect my texture. Make sure I take the UV coordinate. Here we go. So we have it there. One thing that we might want to remember, first of all, yeah, UV image. Oh, that is working fine. Yeah, I thought I saw some artifacts. If you see any artifacts, remember you can only select one texture, select all, and then go here and use nearest pixel. That most of the time fixes this kind of problems. Okay, but it's not quite working, of course, because we need to bring it in. And now I want to move this up. Here we go. So see, now we have that background, and of course we don't want it that strong, so we can just go in here and in post just lower the intensity, and I mean it looks pretty great. And then I was thinking, why do we bring this in the first place? Well, there are multiple things we can do with this, but for one, we can just have reduce the, yeah, if you reduce the roughness, leave the metallic aspect, but then we can use this and actually do some extra stuff to this. So let's say we could, so this is our initial card, right? So we could composite that kind of, you see how it's giving some extra shading that is actually based on light position and whatnot. So why not using that? And then instead of multiplying, we can maybe start to overlay. I think that would be nice. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit too aggressive, but you can see also otherwise, what else could it be? Soft light. Yeah, soft light could work, but I don't know. Is it actually doing something? Yeah. But you can play with it as much as you want, but this is looking pretty sweet. So I'm just gonna add some transform here, set it to 1, bam, and then I always like to add some noise. Reduce this to 0.01 and do the same thing I did before. Just give some extra level of details. Cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Of course, here you can just go and decide, do you want, which kind of effect do you want? And then you can decide how strong that effect should be by modifying the strength of the bump, for example. Do you want that to be based on a color? So then you can, well, that's actually not true here. So this is just used to create a bump, but here is our environment. So yeah, you can turn that into a color and then play with the size of the noise and have all these variations and whatnot. You can create basically pretty much, you can even use a picture of an environment and all of that. Yeah, so I believe this is it. One last thing that we can also do, and when we say we are using this kind of yeah, the kind of standard render pipeline, is to use maybe like create some maps with like metallic maps or something like that. And then, so I could just turn this into a mono, right? And then if I use that here, into my metallic map, then you can see you're adding directly to the card itself, and you can add some extra layers of yeah, reflectivity and whatnot, and details and all that stuff. So, and based on how you're setting up your effects here, it might vary as well. But again, there's plenty of possibility on how to do this, and I hope you will find your own way. I think I will remove that though. I just like it clean like this. This was a very long video, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and tag me in what you are going to do. I will make this available as usual on my Buy Me a Coffee, so link in the descriptions. Thank you for watching. Also remember to just subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and just share with me what you're doing. And I hope to see you soon. I finally moved on in my new apartment. I have now a space to do this kind of stuff. So hopefully I will be able to make even more videos. And thank you so much for all the people that have supported me last year. And I hope this year is gonna be even better, and I will be able to make even more videos. And yeah, it's been great so far. So happy New Year, and see you next time. You've been there all the time. See you next time. Bye.